Hello everyone, you are welcome to this video. My name is Shadrach, and in this video we are going to learn about CSS Flexbox. CSS Flexbox is a CSS3 layout module. Knowing how to use CSS Flexbox makes your life a whole lot easier in terms of laying out elements on the page. We are going to go through some few slides, and after that we are going to jump into the code and look at some examples. What is Flexbox? It is a CSS3 web layout model that allows responsive elements within a container to be automatically arranged depending on the viewport size. In simple terms, it is an easy and clean way to arrange items within a container. When I mentioned CSS3, someone is going to ask what is the difference between CSS and CSS3. Basically, CSS is different from CSS3 in a sense that CSS3 has modules. CSS is the basic version and it does not support responsive design. CSS3 is the latest version and it supports responsive design. CSS cannot be split into modules. CSS3 can be split into modules. That's the difference. Previously, the only way we were able to align items or lay out items on the web page correctly, but then it wasn't really easy, was using floats and sometimes positions. With the introduction of Flexboxes, we no longer need floats, and then it also supports responsive design. It is mobile friendly. Positioning of child elements is much easier. Initially, this used to be a very painful experience. With Flexbox, it is much easier to position child elements within a parent element. You can also control the order of the elements any way you like. So the order of elements can be changed easily without editing the source HTML. Very easy. You're going to be seeing that shortly when we jump into writing some code. Let's look at some basic terminologies and what we mean by those terminologies. You're going to hear cross stat, cross end, main stat, main end, flex items, flex container, main axis, cross axis. These are all different terminologies that you need to be aware what they mean. So if I say flex container, what is a flex container? So basically, as you can see here, any container you want to align items inside, you set the display to flex and that becomes a flex container. Flex container is the parent container which is having a display of flex. So the items in a flex container are called flex items. So for example, the first item here is a flex item, another flex item. You can have a lot of other flex items within a flex container. And then we also have the main axis, which is depending on the flex direction, primary axis along which flex items are laid out. One thing to take note is that the main axis is not necessarily horizontal. It depends on the flex direction property, right? So it could be vertical. You're going to be seeing what I mean. These two, main axis and cross axis, are dependent on the flex direction property. If the flex direction property is set to row, then the main axis is horizontal, the cross axis is vertical. If the flex direction is set to column, the main axis become top to bottom, and then the cross axis become left to right. What do we mean by main stats as well, and then main end? Flex items are placed within a container starting from the main stat and going to the main end. For example, this flex item is from the main stat and it's going towards this direction. That is the main end here. Some of the properties we're going to be talking about are here. So you're going to set the flex container to display flex directions for the flex items in that container. Some values for flex directions like row reverse, column reverse, and you're going to be seeing what each of them does. So we have flex wrap, flex spaces, justify content line items, and the others. It's a bit difficult talking about it like this, so it's going to be much clearer if we jump into the code and look at some of these properties. Let's look at the browser support as well. So this is the data from Can I Use, and you could see that Flexbox is supported on almost all the browsers, with the exception of this, which is orange, which is not a problem because these days you hardly see people using this. So in the next video, we are going to jump into the text editor, write some code, and see Flexbox in action. See you in the next video. Welcome back to the second video on Flexboxes. So in this video, we are going to be writing some code, understand Flexboxes well with some examples. I will be using Visual Studio Code as my text editor, and we're going to be seeing the results in the browser here. I have a very basic setup with some few styling which we don't really care about, but I can show you what I have. I have an index.html file, and it contains some divs, and then the parent div element is having this class called cat, and all these children elements have this item and item 1, second one item 2, item 3. They all have these common class names as well. I will be writing my styles here in the styles.css file, which I've linked here. The default styling here is also coming from this with some basic styling here. Yeah, as I said, the focus is not on this one. We're just going to be focusing on using the Flexbox properties to see how it works. So the first property I'm going to be talking about in this video is the flex direction. You can see that by default the layout is on top of each other because all these div elements are block level elements. They take up the full width of their parent container, so they stack on top of each other. So the first thing is to make the container, the parent container, a flex container. So we do that by saying display flex. And notice when I save it, what is going to happen to these elements in the container. They now moved from stacking on top of each other to stacking side by side. This container is now a flex container. Once we set the container, or we make the container a flex container, by default the flex direction changes to row. That's why we have these items lined side by side. Flex direction is row, so if I save it, there is no change. I can say flex direction is column. So when I save it, it goes back to how it was initially, but then it is not block level elements again. They are flex items with a flex direction of column. That's why they are stacking on top of each other. That brings us back to the terminologies we mentioned. So if the flex direction is row, they go from left to right. The main axis is now from left to right because the flex direction is row. When I set it to column, now the main axis is now from top to bottom. That's what I meant. That's why they are stacking on top of each other. We can also set the flex direction to row reverse like this. So when I save it, notice how it changes too. They are still lying side by side, but this time the main axis has changed. Instead of from left to right, it is now starting from right to left. So item 1, item 2, and then item 3. You guessed right, we can also change it to column reverse, and it's going to start from bottom to top, to the top. So basically the flex direction sets the direction of the main axis and the cross axis. You saw from the example, if I set it to column reverse like this, it is starting from bottom to top. If I set it to just column, from top to bottom. If I set it to row, it's from left to right. Row reverse is from right to left. So that is it about flex direction. Let's go to the next video where I talk about flex wrap. See you in the next video. Hello everyone, you're welcome back once again to the third video on CSS Flexbox. In the previous video we talked about flex direction, got to know about these 4 flex direction values. In this video we are going to be talking about flex wrap. What does flex wrap do? So I'm going to say flex wrap, no wrap. Flex wrap is what is going to make the flex items wrap when you get to. So by default, the flex wrap value is no wrap. So if I save this, you'd see that there is not going to be a lot of change in this. If I bring this one here a little bit and I try to shrink the browser, so you see that when it gets to the minimum width, it is going to, the text is going to come down. Setting flex wrap as no wrap is the default behavior for the flex wrap property. If I want the container to wrap, for example, when it hits the minimum width here, it should come to the next line. I will set the flex wrap property to wrap. Right. So if I shrink it and it gets to that minimum width, it's going to come to the next line. You can also set it to wrap reverse. So what wrap reverse is going to do is, when it gets here, the third item is supposed to come down, but in this case it is going to reverse. So instead of it coming down, it's going to go up. It's going to wrap onto multiple lines, but from bottom to top, not from top to bottom as it is with the wrap. Let me save this and try to shrink the browser again. So you see that the third item is now at the top here. So it is wrapping from bottom to top this time. If I try to go again, let me open a console so that it makes it very smaller. So you see that the third item is here, the second item is here, and then the first item is rather at the bottom. So basically, that is what flex wrap does. It makes your flex items wrap when it gets to the minimum width of the container. Yeah, it is a very short video, but hopefully you get the understanding. In the next video, let's talk about justify content. See you in the next video. Hello everyone, welcome back once again to this video. In the previous video, we talked about flex wrap, which lets your flex items wrap in the container when it gets to the minimum width of the container. In this video, we are going to talk about one of the most used properties with Flexbox, and it is called justify content. Justify content defines the alignment of your flex items along the main axis. You already know about the main axis and then the cross axis. Depending on your flex direction, which is going to specify the main and cross axis, it is going to align the items along the main axis. So what do I mean by that? Now, by default, our flex direction is row, which means that our main axis is from left to right. So I'll say that justify content flex start. When you hover the mouse on some of these values, it tells you what they does, right? So align items along the main axis of the current line of the flex container. Flex start is going to align all the items from left to right on the main axis. It is basically the default behavior with the flex items here, the alignment of the flex items in the container currently. I can change this one to flex end, and you see that it changes. It is still from left to right, but then it is aligned at the end of the container. I can also try center, justify content center, which is going to align the items in the middle of the flex container. There is space around. It is going to add spaces around each of the flex item. So there is a space here, space here, space here for this, one here, one here, one here for this as well, right? So we get spaces around the items, space between, which is basically going to add the spaces in between the flex items instead of around the flex items. I can also change this one to space evenly. It works similarly to the space around, but this time it is going to divide the spaces evenly for the flex items. With the space around, it gives equal spaces to the left and right sides of the flex item, but with the evenly, it gives even spaces at the start, in between, and at the end of the flex item. So you see that the space here is the same as what is here, and it's the same as this and this. There is also the justify content start and end property, and the way you're going to understand this is, it works similarly to the flex start, but it is different, right? So flex start and flex end are based on the flex direction. So right now the flex direction is set to row. So if I say flex start, it is going to start from here. Flex end, it is going to go this way. Now notice if I change this one to row reverse, it is going to start from here. The main axis is now changed from right to left. So flex end is actually this side and flex start is this side. Now if I change this one to end, so even though the main axis is starting from right to left, when I say justify content end, it is all the time going to be aligned to the end of the flex container. The same thing with if I do that, even though the flex direction is row reverse, if I change it to flex dash start, it's going to start from here, which means that the flex direction is from here to here. Yeah, so that's the difference between the flex start, flex end, start, and then the end. One is aligned along the main axis, one is aligned based on the writing mode of the container. There is also the left and then right. So if I use right, it is going to behave like doing end, just like this. It is going to align the items at the end of the container. Unless it doesn't actually make sense, then it's going to behave like end. The same thing with if I do left, it is going to align the items at the start of the container or at the left side of the container. Unless it doesn't make sense, then it's going to behave like start. I mean, most of the time, flex start, flex end is going to just be okay for what you are looking to do. You can experiment with this a bit to understand how they work, but basically one is aligned based on the flex direction, which determines the main axis and the cross axis. And then when you're using start and end, it is aligning the items at the end and at the start and end of the container, regardless of the flex direction. That was a lot to take in, but hopefully you get what I mean. In the next video, we are going to be talking about align items. So I will see you in the next video. Hello everyone, welcome back once again to the fifth video on CSS Flexbox. In this video, we are going to talk about align items. So in the previous video, we talked about justify content. Justify content defines the default behavior for how flex items are laid out along the main axis. Align items is going to define the default behavior for how flex items are laid out along the cross axis. It specifies align items, and by default the align items is set to stretch. So when I say align items stretch, you see that it's not going to change anything at all. I can change this to flex start, for example, and you'd see that it is going to change it to the start of the cross axis. Now it is actually picking the actual height of the items, which I have set here. They all now start at the start of the cross axis from top to bottom. If I change it to flex end, it is going to align the items at the end of the cross axis. I can change it to center like this, and this will be aligned at the center of the cross axis. It behaves like justify content, but then instead of aligning the items along the main axis, it aligns the items at the cross axis. You can combine justify content and align items to achieve whichever alignment you want. So I can also say that justify content center, which is going to center the items in the center of the main axis. I can change this one to start. Justify content is still center, but then the align items, the cross axis, is going to start from the top. That is what we call cross start. The next one I want to do is called baseline. And to be able to demonstrate what I want to show you, I will give some font sizes to these items. So I would say that item, I'm using the class name, item 1, and I'll say font size is maybe 3 rem. It's going to make it bigger. I can also increase it for item 2. I need to bring the dot. Font size, let's say 4 rem. notice that when the align items is center like this, the flex items are aligned at the center, but then this text is at the top. This one is very big somewhere here, and then this one is also here. I mean, even this one and this one is not actually aligned, but as soon as I change it to baseline, you see that all the text gets aligned horizontally, and that actually determines the alignment of the flex items also. So that is what a baseline align items baseline actually does. So this baseline is going to align the items based on the alignment or the base alignment of the text. The flexbox items are aligned at the baseline of the cross axis first of all, and then because the flex direction is rule, it means by default the cross axis is vertical, that is from top to down, and this means that the flex items will be aligned in order to have the baseline of their text aligned along a horizontal line, right? These flex items here will be aligned based on their text, right? So based on the text which is aligned horizontally. Right. Yeah. So I mean, basically that's it. That's what the baseline align items baseline means. Based on the text in the flex items, it is going to align the containers based on the text, based on the alignment of the text horizontally. Okay. So that's it for this video. Let's go straight into the next video. See you in the next video. Hello there. Welcome back once again to the CSS Flexbox videos. In this video, we are going to learn another CSS property called align self. So up until now, all the Flexbox properties we've been writing has been for the flex container. So the display flex, flex direction, flex wrap, justify content, align items are all specified for the flex container. There are other Flexbox properties that can be specified for the flex items themselves, and one of those properties is align self. Let's see how align self works. When you say align self, you're basically telling the flex item to align itself. I mean, as simple as that, right? So I can say that align self, and then the first one I'm going to say flex end. So when I say align self flex end, it's basically going to align itself to the end of the cross axis. It works like align items, but then this is going to have priority over this. So when you specify a property in the flex container and you specify a property in the child container, the child container property has priority over the property specified in the parent container. Yeah, so you could see that here the align items is set to center, but then when I specify align self flex end here, it's going to take priority over this align center, and it's going to align that item to the bottom of the cross axis because the flex direction here is rule. I can also say that align self for this one to be center. It's not going to change much because it's already center. Align self flex start, then this is going to align itself to the start of the container. Alright, you'll see this properly if I give this larger height. For example, let's say 500 pixels. Yeah, it's more clear to see the alignment now. Let's go into the next video to look at the order property to see how we can order these items based on how we want them to display or start where we want them to be. Yeah, so see you in the next video. Hello, welcome back once again. So in this video, we are going to talk about the order property. So in the last video, we talked about align self as one of the properties you can specify for flex items. Now the second one I'm going to be talking about is the order property. We know this is the first item. I mean, there's a first item, second item, and then the third item. So let me clear this align self for now. And then save it so that I bring them back to like the default alignment. Let's say I want to change the order of these flex items. I want to make item 2 come first, item 3, and then item 1. So I can order these items anyhow I want, right? So I can say that item 1 order is maybe 2. Yeah, let me say it like that. Item 2 order is 3. I can say that order is 1. So basically it's going to shuffle around. Now item 3 is now taking the first spot, which is basically being ordered to be like the first item here. Item 2 is now in order 3, which is basically going to be the third item here, as you can see here. And item 2's order is 2, which is going to be in the middle, right? So you can change the order in any way you like. I can say that item 1 should be 3 instead of 2, and item 2 should rather be 1, and then item 3 should be 2. When I save it, it's going to reshuffle it again. So item 2 is now the first item, item 3 is now the second item, and then item 1 is now the third item. Yeah, so you can also change the order of the flex items with the order property. That's it. I will see you in the next video where I talk about flex grow. See you in the next video. Welcome back. So in this video I'm going to talk about flex grow. In the previous video we talked about how we can change the order of the flex items. In this video we are going to talk about how we can grow the flex items. So flex grow basically defines the ability for a flex item to grow if necessary. I would just clean this. I can now see that item 2 should have a flex grow of 2. See what happens. If I set a flex grow of 2, it's going to be much bigger than the items here, because by default the grow number is actually 0. So if I say flex grow 1, so this is going to be much bigger than this. This is going to be the smallest because by default the flex grow is 0. So this looks like twice the size of this. Negative numbers are not accepted. Negative numbers are invalid. So basically if you want one of your items to be bigger than the other, you can use flex grow to make it grow a bit. That's basically it. Let's talk about flex shrink in the next video. Hello there, welcome back again. So in this video we are going to talk about flex shrink. So in a previous video we saw how we can grow an item, a flex item, by using a flex grow property. So how can we also shrink a flex item using a flex shrink property? So basically it is the same. I can, instead of flex grow, I can say flex shrink, say maybe 3, and that is going to make item 2 shrink. The same thing with item 1, I can just say flex shrink 4, which is higher than 3. Flex shrink, not grow, and it's going to be much smaller. Flex shrink also defines the ability for a flex item to shrink if necessary, and as I mentioned previously, you can't also put in negative numbers, right? So if I put in -3, it's not going to have any effect on it. It's not going to work. That is basically it with flex shrink. So these are a bit simpler. In the next video I'm going to combine some of these properties we've talked about to align some items. I am also going to share some useful resources about Flexbox that can help you accelerate your learning. So yeah, follow me on to the next video and let's finish it up. Hello everyone, welcome back to the last video of this Flexbox tutorials. So in this video we see Flexbox in use here. I'll go through what I have here and how I was able to achieve this layout. In the end I will also share some useful resources and websites you can learn more about Flexbox. So I have these 9 boxes here. So basically if I show you the HTML, just a div, with these numbers in them, and the parent div is called card. Here I am making the parent element a flex container. This is just setting a fixed height for the element. I'm setting the flex direction to row, so I mean this is just the default flex direction, which means that the main axis is from left to right and the cross axis is from top to bottom. Now I'm saying flex wrap, and that is the reason why I am able to get these ones down here. Without the flex wrap, I will have all of them stacking side by side, struggling to fit inside the container. And you also notice that because we don't have this flex wrap, the item does not obey the width set for it. So if I go here, I've set a width for the item, width and height, 100 pixels here, but because there is no flex wrap, it does not obey the width and height. So when I bring back the flex wrap, it's now starts obeying the width and height set for it, and that's because it can wrap when it gets to the minimum width of the container, right? So if I try to shrink the browser or expand the browser, yeah, it's going to wrap. You would notice that the size of this element, the 7th element, is bigger. That's because I've set the flex grow as 2. So based on the space available for the flex items, going to occupy the rest of the spaces available after the default. By default, these flex items have a flex grow of 0, so this is going to occupy the rest of the space. So if I make it bigger, it's going to. And I am also doing align items center just to make sure they are aligned center on the cross axis. So yeah, from top to bottom. Justify content center as well. You'd notice that these numbers are also in the middle of the container, and this is possible and easy because these containers are also flex containers themselves, right? So you see a display flex here, and then I do align item center, justify content center to be able to center these text in these containers. I mean, the limitation is just up to you. You can have flex containers inside flex containers inside flex containers. I mean, just to achieve whichever layout you want to achieve. So layouts are much simpler because of flex boxes, and understanding how to use these flex boxes makes our life a whole much easier. So to learn more about flex boxes, some few websites you can actually check them out. I would put the links to these websites in the description so that you can have access to them easily. So when you go to CSS Tricks, there is a complete guide to Flexbox. It's a very good guide. It will teach you a lot about Flexboxes, so you can just go to this site and learn more about Flexboxes here. The next one is CSS reference. So when you come to the Flexbox section, it also contains very useful information and good examples about flex boxes, which you can find here. So I'll leave the link in the description. You can check this out. Now I find these ones very interesting as well. So this is a Flexbox Froggy. It's basically a game to help you understand flex boxes well. So for example, if I do something like justify content flex, and you see that it will align the frog on the pond here. You go to next. This one is going to be justify content center, so you can just do justify this content center like this, and then it will align them perfectly on their respective ponds. So basically this is going to help you improve your knowledge by playing a game. It's a very fun game to learn flex boxes, so try and check this out. And this one is very similar to the previous one. It's also a game, so I'll leave all the links in the description. You can check them out. Thank you very much for staying with me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more of these. Like the video and also leave your comments. Thank you very much. I'll see you again next time.